None of the crew has seen Rowan all day. They were expecting her to show up with another endearing tradition, but she wasn't anywhere to be seen. Vexy started getting a bit concerned and searched for her. The golden archeoler found her in her chambers watching some kind of holovid.
Are you well, Rowan?
Vexy asked.
Huh?
Rowan jumped before seeing Vexy.
Oh, I'm fine. I'm just practicing another family tradition.
And that is?
Christmas movie marathon.
Rowan answered.
My family always dedicated an entire day to watch as many Christmas movies as possible.
May I participate?
Sure.
Rowan smiled.
The Santa Claus is just coming on.
None of the healers could find their archeoler anywhere. They all looked in the places she could be before one of them suggested checking Rowan's chambers. They looked and saw Rowan and Vexy sitting together watching what appears to be a movie themed around the holiday. Even though this movie seems to have two human males chasing a human kit unsuccessfully for some reason.
What is going on?
A dirt and snow healer with amber eye markings asked.
We are watching Christmas movies.
Vexy answered before asking.
Do you wish to participate?
Yeah.
Rowan smiled.
I'm just about to play all of the other reindeer after this.
Out of sheer curiosity, all the healers sat down around Rowan to watch the movie. Just finished doing research on how Rowan's digestive system worked via testing some gastric acid donated by Rowan herself. The research was incredibly thorny due to the extreme acidity of her gastric juices. It's worse than the Queen's in that it can eat through ceremomitol. Even the Leopex aren't this bad. He thought Rowan was exaggerating when she told him to use a tempered form of glass to study it. He also thought she was joking when she warned him that it might eat him. Now he saw and felt how serious she was. It actually ate into one of his limbs, even though he wore multiple layers of protective equipment. Scuttled to the healer's nook and saw that no one was there, not even a healer. He looked around the ship before checking in Rowan's chambers. He saw all 20 healers sitting around Rowan watching a holovid.
What's going on here?
He asked.
Science officer?
Vexy asked. Rowan asked.
You really should teach us how to do that.
An amber and snow healer with void eye markings suggested.
I've already tried with Vexy.
Rowan stated.
Repeatedly.
The healer bobbed his head in understanding.
What in the name of kind Kitsumi happened to your limb?
Vexy asked in horror.
What?
Rowan asked before noticing.
Holy shit!
Now, I know it's bad when it horrifies a human.
Rattled his plates in amusement before answering.
I was doing experiments on Rowan's digestive system.
You didn't take my advice.
Rowan deadpanned.
I thought you were either joking or exaggerating.
Rowan used her right limb to smack her face in a show of exasperation. Vexy got up to look at the limb that has been dissolved to the muscle. She sighed through her nose and shook her head.
The limb is not salvageable.
Vexy observed.
You will have to let the limb go.
Very well.
Chattered before concentrating. There was a strange popping noise and the limb dangled uselessly. He pulled the hunk of meat and chitin off, which came off as cleanly as a crab leg. It made Rowan scream in horror.
It is all right, Rowan.
Vexy assured the horrified human.
But his arm...
Rowan stammered.
It will grow back when he sheds his exoskeleton.
Vexy explained.
Chitini lose limbs all the time, especially their soldiers when they defend the hive. They react to lost limbs the same way you would to a small cut.
You sure?
Rowan asked.
I am quite certain.
Vexy bobbed her head.
The science officer is far from my first Chitini patient. Lost limbs are as common as Vulpin kits, skinning their hind limb.
That's actually really fucking cool.
Rowan grinned before with questions.
How do you pull it off? What was that popping noise? Does it hurt? How long does it take to grow a new limb? Can you do that to all your limbs? What made your species evolve like that? What if you...
I'll answer all your questions at a later time.
Clicked rapidly to stop her torrent of questions.
All right.
Now, what is everyone doing in your chambers?
He asked while looking at all the healers.
We're watching Christmas movies.
Rowan answered,
Want to join in? You'll learn more about us that way.
Very well.
clicked with his plates hissing.
I don't really have anything better to do since I'm a limb short.
Vastra was doing her rounds for the 4th time this diurnal. As she walked by, she noticed how oddly quiet it was. She curiously looked in the labs and found them to be empty. She assumed the science crew might be eating in the feeding chambers. Then she looked in the healer's nook and found it completely empty, which alarmed her greatly. She just knew Rowan had something to do with this and sprinted to the human's chambers on 4-paw. It was empty, too. Thoroughly alarmed, she ran to the feeding chambers to find it empty as well. Even the leap drive chamber was missing most of its crew. The remaining diglings said something about a move e-marathon in the communal chambers. Vastra called her Leopex guards and went straight to the communal chambers. She found Rowan, all the healers, all the scientists, most of the diglings, and even the captain all watching an enlarged holovid of a movie that was clearly related to the holiday. It seemed to be something about a human kit going to great lengths to get a toy weapon of some kind.
Vastra,
Captain Valop pulsed.
I was planning on having Rowan find you.
What is going on here?
Vastra demanded.
Rowan is having as much of the crew as we can muster, watching an all-deneural movie marathon.
Valop explained.
It is a tradition Rowan had when her clan was still alive. They apparently took great pains to set a Cathural aside to watch as many of these movies as possible.
I see.
Do you wish to join in?
Valop asked.
Some of these are quite interesting and answer many of my questions.
Vastra sighed before answering.
Do I have a choice?
Rowan told me in no uncertain terms that if you refuse, she would bodily drag you here and use the garland to restrain you to a chair.
Valop stated.
So, that is a no.
Vastra assumed, which made Valop bob his head in agreement. Vastra sighed again before telling her guards verbally.
Well, it seems we do not have anything better to do.
They all nodded their agreement.
Do you wish to watch these movies with Rowan? They look interesting enough.
Jorim answered.
Yeah,
Hajik agreed.
I want to see if that human will get this toy weapon he keeps mentioning.
We seem to be in agreement.
Vastra pulsed to Valop.
We will participate in this marathon.
Vastra and her guards sat down to watch the holovid of the poor human kid getting kicked down the slide by the boot of someone clearly dressed as Santa. The Void Vulpin couldn't see what it is about these movies that seems to keep everyone in place for hours. But it seems to be scarily effective as she sat there watching these strange and often amusing movies with everyone for the entire diurnal. She knew they all would be behind in their work, herself included, but she can't seem to bring herself to care as she watched a human kid explain what happens every time one of those noisy spheres rings. Rowan was hosting a competition in the food preparation chamber that was yet another family tradition of hers. How she keeps track of them all will be a mystery for generations to come. At least this tradition shouldn't span another diurnal. Hopefully. She had some Vulpins, a couple of Diglings, and the only 2 female Leopex participating. All they knew was that it was a contest of some kind. They had no idea what it entailed. After everything Rowan had shown them so far, they felt that it could be anything. Rowan finally walked in and began to explain what this competition is about.
Hello, everyone,
Rowan smiled.
and welcome to the gingerbread competition.
Gingerbread?
Beso asked.
It's a type of cookie made with ginger.
Rowan smiled.
I checked with Annan and ginger is safe for you guys to eat. Well, he told me the Vulpins might get an upset stomach if they eat too much. Also, the Kittini can't have it at all because it'll literally melt their insides.
What does a competition have to do with cookies?
Vexi asked.
Are we trying to make the best one?
I love how fast the Vulpins catch on.
Rowan thought to herself before explaining.
Close. You guys are not only trying to make the best tasting gingerbread, you have to create a gingerbread house as well.
Does it have to be typical human gingerbread house?
Basso asked.
Nope.
Rowan smiled.
That's the whole point. You have to get creative. Make a gingerbread house that is entirely your own.
Who is judging this contest?
Vastra asked.
And what are they judging?
I'll be judging.
Rowan answered.
I will be judging based on taste, presentation, and creativity.
What are the rules?
Janaik, a golden Leopex, asked.
Everything has to be made from scratch.
Rowan explained.
That more or less means you can't use anything pre-made. You have to use gingerbread, it has to be edible, no stealing other people's gingerbread, and have fun.
Everyone spent half the diurnal making gingerbread as well as the things needed to decorate the houses. There were quite a few fires that Rowan had to put out. They also spent a quarter just creating their gingerbread houses while keeping in mind that they had to be edible. So much for not taking up the whole diurnal. Rowan looked at Vexy's gingerbread house, which was more of a gingerbread tree house. Most of the decorations were made of frosting and straight sugar. Even the tree leaves were frosting shaped carefully into leaves. This house alone would make a whole hive of chitini dust crazed, while their innards boil due to the ginger.
A gingerbread treehouse, eh?
Rowan observed.
Mostly sugar from the looks of it. The tree is gingerbread, and so is the house.
Rowan tore a piece off the tree, house, and a leaf. She ate them one at a time and started to rub her mouth a bit.
Are you all right?
Vexy asked.
A bit light on the ginger.
Rowan observed.
The sugar is making my teeth hurt.
Sorry. It's all right. Rowan smiled.
What it lacks in taste, it makes up for in looks.
Vexy's ears curled a bit at that, as Rowan moved on to the next house. Vastra's house was the Valpak itself. She somehow shaped the gingerbread into a smooth octagon shape, with two arms sticking out the front that almost meet. She used frosting she made herself to detail the ship. It looked pretty impressive to Rowan. She certainly had never seen a gingerbread ship before.
Wow, a gingerbread ship.
Rowan commented,
That's a new one for my family.
Is that so?
Vastra asked.
Yep, I'm almost mad that I never got to make gingerbread ships.
Rowan laughed.
I'm gonna fix that when I get back home.
Vastra wheezed in amusement as Rowan tore a tiny piece off the ship and took a bite.
Mmm,
Rowan nodded.
just the right amount of ginger, but it's a bit dry. The frosting's a bit hard, too.
I left the ingredients alone for a bit too long.
Vastra admitted.
I had no time to fix it.
Well, now I'm even more amazed you managed to shape this into a ship without it falling apart.
Rowan observed.
It was not easy.
Vastra sighed through her nose at the memory of crumbling failures.
I can only imagine.
Rowan smirked as she moved on to the Leopex queens to see and taste their creations. Chiron's gingerbread house was more of a tower than a house. It had lots of harsh edges, frosted spikes, a drawbridge for a door, and the whole thing just screamed, "Fear me!"
I take it this tower is part of your culture?
Rowan asked.
It's the pack hall where all alphas meet with the alpha of alphas to discuss many things from migrations of our food to territorial disputes.
Chiron answered.
Is it really this intimidating?
Rowan asked.
No, it's much more imposing than this.
Chiron answered.
I guess one can only do so much with gingerbread, icing, frosting, and sugar.
Rowan shrugged. Chiron nodded as Rowan tore a piece off the tower and ate it. It took everything for her not to spit it out.
Ugh, it's like eating cardboard.
Rowan shouted.
Did you use any ginger or sugar for that matter?
Are those important?
Chiron asked.
Yeah.
Rowan sighed.
They both make the gingerbread house not taste like drywall.
Dare I ask how you know what those clearly inedible objects taste like?
Chiron asked.
Human children have a habit of learning about an object by putting it in their mouths.
Rowan answered.
I was especially bad due to the fact that I had pica. It basically means that I ate things most people would see as inedible.
Why did you have this pica?
Chiron asked.
It was a combination of my autism and some nutritional deficiencies.
Rowan answered.
I'm fine now. I'm well aware that cardboard, drywall, soap, and plastics are not food and should not be anywhere near my mouth.
That's good.
Chiron nodded while curling her tail in amusement.
I would hate to hear about you consuming ceremometol in front of the crew.
Rowan couldn't help laughing as she moved on to Janik to see another Leopex creation. She only hopes this one tastes marginally better, or that Gen X had the common sense to use sugar and ginger. Gen X creations looked more like a house. Well, if your house is a cave with a handful of futuristic furnishings, it didn't even have a door or windows.
I take it this is a typical home for Leopex?
Rowan asked.
Yes, it is a fairly typical den for us,
She answered,
if a bit highly furnished.
"It looks pretty good." Rowan commented,
The stones that form the cave look like stones to me.
That's because I assembled it piece by piece like we do back home.
Janik explained with her tail high in pride.
Well, let's see how it tastes.
Rowan smiled as she carefully took a piece and brought it to her mouth. Rowan smiled.
At least one of you understands the concept of ginger and sugar. This reminds me of how my mom made gingerbread houses. You might just win if the Diglings aren't as good or better.
Janet couldn't help wagging the tip of her tail at the comment. Rowan smirked at the similarities between those Leopex and her cats. She moved on to the Diglings to see what they've created. The Golden Diglings' house looked more like a space station. It practically took up half the table the Digling was using. The gingerbread starbase was really wide from having so many buildings and modules. She also used frosting and icing to detail the station.
That has got to be the biggest gingerbread creation I've ever seen,
Rowan commented.
It's one of our trade centres.
The Digling explained.
We buy or sell anything in trade centres. Each module sells different goods to different species. We try to accommodate all.
It certainly shows a...
Rowan stalled.
I never got your name.
Reese.
The Gold Digling answered.
I chief engineer on Valpok.
Reese?
Asked.
Like the candy?
No, it is Reese.
She corrected.
Okay.
Rowan nodded as she took a piece off the Gingerbread Trade Center and nearly went into a coughing fit.
Not bad.
Rowan wheezed.
You went a bit heavy on the ginger, though.
I remember that next time.
Rissy stomped her foot twice in understanding. Rowan nodded as she moved on to the last contestant. Basso seemed to have made a huge block of gingerbread and chiseled out a tunnel network. He used frosting, icing, and pieces of gingerbread to detail the network with all kinds of tiny furniture. He even made little gingerbread diglings, which Rowan couldn't help admiring.
Those gingerbread diglings are so cute,
Rowan exclaimed.
I've never seen a gingerbread house that shows an underground home before. That could not have been easy to make.
It not take long to make gingerbread.
Basso explained.
It took much time to dig out tunnel, longer to decorate and make digling herd.
Wait, is this?
Rowan asked.
Yes, is only memory of home before.
Basso couldn't finish the pulse. I see. Rowan faltered. It okay? Basso boggled his eyes. I have new herd now. Rowan smiled with the unshed tears in her eyes as she carefully took a piece of the block. She didn't dare touch the decor or the gingerbread diglings. Rowan's eyes nearly popped out of their sockets the second the piece hit her mouth.
Whoa.
Rowan breathed.
That took me back. Eh? This tastes almost exactly like my Grandma Jess's gingerbread men cookies.
Rowan smiled.
This has to be the most perfect blend of sugar and ginger I've had. That's not even going into how unique and personal your creation is. I think we have a winner.
What I get?
Basso asked, while boggling his eyes even faster. Rowan went into the preparation chamber, grabbed something from the cooling module, and brought it to Basso. They were the gingerbread men cookies Rowan was talking about.
You get first pick.
Rowan grinned. Basso's eyes couldn't boggle any faster if he tried. He grabbed a cookie, and Rowan turned to the others.
Janik, you're next.
Rowan smiled. Janet grabbed her cookie, followed by Vastra, Reese, Vexy, and Chiron. Rowan gave the worst ones some tips on improving their creations, most of which boiled down to balancing ginger and sugar. Rowan could tell that cooking and using spices properly were not their strongest suit. But, Rowan smiled, recalling how well Janik and Basso did. At least these Xenos aren't completely hopeless in that regard. When everyone left, Rowan secretly gave Basso the recipe for the gingerbread men cookies. She even suggested he make them for the party on Christmas Eve. Basso stomped his foot twice in excitement before rushing to the Digling chambers to start coming up with ideas for the cookies.